The question of what makes you you is the oldest mirror in philosophy. It is a question that echoes through every culture, yet never ages. We recognize its whisper when we stare into a mirror, when memory flickers, when change unsettles us. What persists beneath transformation? What center watches the world through your eyes? Long before psychology spoke of personality and neuroscience traced circuits of identity, two minds ask this question with depth unequaled since: Plato and Aristotle. They stand at the dawn of Western thought, shaping how we still understand the self, as soul and as form, as memory and as motion. Their answers differ, but together they draw the map of being human. Plato begins with the conviction that the real self is eternal. In Athens of the 4th century BCE, Plato founded the Academy, a sanctuary for ideas. He looked beyond the visible and declared that truth does not live in matter, but in mind. The world you touch is not the ultimate reality. It is the copy, an echo of eternal patterns known as the forms. To Plato, your essence belongs to that higher order. Before birth, your soul contemplated perfect beauty, perfect justice, perfect truth. Life, then, is a process of remembering what the soul has already seen. When something strikes you as noble or beautiful, it is not novelty, it is recognition. Knowledge is recollection. Existence is remembrance. Plato teaches that the soul remembers what it truly is. Learning, he says, is not accumulation of facts, but awakening of memory. Every act of genuine insight is the soul recovering itself. We have, within us, the trace of the divine. To remember that origin is liberation. Plato divides the soul into 3 parts: reason, spirit, and appetite. Reason must govern, spirit lends courage, appetite drives desire. Harmony among the 3 defines virtue and identity. Disorder, when appetite overpowers reason, creates confusion of self. Thus, knowing yourself is moral as well as metaphysical. To discover the true self is to discipline the false. Plato believes the body hides the truth that the soul already knows. In the Phaedrus, he imagines the soul as a charioteer steering 2 horses, one noble, one wild. The noble horse strives upward toward divine vision. The wild pulls downward toward sensual distraction. Wisdom is the art of steering. The self you announce with your name, your habits, your fears, all this is the chariot. The real you is the charioteer awakening to mastery. The body changes, passion fades, memory erodes, but the thinking principle, the rational soul, belongs to the realm of the forms and cannot die. Your truest identity, for Plato, is that immortal intellect, a spark of the divine mind. Plato reminds us that the physical world is a shadow, and the soul is the light behind it. In his immortal allegory of the cave, prisoners stare at shadows cast by firelight, mistaking illusion for truth. One escapes, reaches daylight, and sees reality for the first time. That freed prisoner symbolizes the philosopher, the one who awakens to the higher world. And what is that cave today? It is ignorance, distraction, ego, the flickering screen of appearances. To awaken is to remember. The light that reveals the forms is the same light that burns quietly within, consciousness itself. Plato's message is both comforting and demanding. You are more than the shadow you inhabit, but you must ascend to know it. Aristotle answers Plato by insisting that truth lives inside the world, not beyond it. Plato's greatest student turned gently and radically against his master. Where Plato sought eternity, Aristotle sought understanding of time. Where Plato separated the immaterial and the physical, Aristotle reunited them. For Aristotle, the self is not visitor but participant. Soul is not ghostly essence. It is the living structure, the organizing principle of a body in motion. Just as the shape defines the marble statue, the soul defines the living being. Body and soul are one process viewed from 2 angles, matter and form intertwined. Aristotle teaches that the soul is the form of the living body. Every creature manifests soul according to its capacities. Plants have the power to grow and reproduce. Animals add perception and movement. Humans possess reason. But all these layers are aspects of the same continuum of life. Death, then, is not the soul's departure, but the dissolution of form. The pattern unravels when the material ceases to hold it. Immortality may survive in influence rather than in individual eternity. The self, therefore, is not a pre-existent spirit, but an embodied expression of potential fulfilled through action. Aristotle shows that selfhood is an activity rather than a possession. He introduces two words that changed philosophy forever: potentiality and actuality. An acorn is potentially an oak. It becomes actual through growth, purpose, and environment. So too with the human soul. To exist is to move from possibility to realization. The self is a verb, not a noun. Every habit, every decision, every discipline either nourishes or distorts that unfolding. Virtue is the habit of actualizing your highest potential. Identity is not inherited from heaven. It is earned through practice. Aristotle believes that happiness is the self realized in harmony with reason. He called this flourishing eudaimonia. It does not mean pleasure or fortune. It means living in accordance with purpose, guided by balanced virtue. For him, the good life is not reward, but expression. The oak tree fulfills its nature by growing strong and giving shade. The human fulfills its nature by reasoning well and living justly. Your sense of self matures as your virtues mature. Character becomes destiny because repeated actions crystallize essence. If Plato urged transcendence, Aristotle urged integration. Together they sketch the polarity of human life, ascending spirit and grounded form. The two masters offer competing but complementary visions of what a self is. Plato's self is transcendent, the eternal soul recalling its origin. Aristotle's self is immanent, the embodied mind discovering its shape through action. One looks upward to truth, the other outward to purpose. One seeks release, the other seeks realization. The tension between them is creative, not tragic. Without Plato, we forget wonder. Without Aristotle, we forget work. Between them, the human spirit stands balanced, yearning toward the infinite, yet rooted in the actual. The Western idea of the soul grows from the conversation between Plato and Aristotle. Early Christian thinkers wove their visions together. Plato gave heaven, Aristotle gave nature. From them arose centuries of theology and science, spirituality and logic. The argument continued through Augustine, Aquinas, Descartes, Locke, and continues now in neuroscience and psychology. Each era reframes the same puzzle. Is the self an observer behind the eyes or a pattern within the brain? Do we possess consciousness or are we consciousness itself? The heritage of these Greeks is the ongoing dialogue of spirit and matter. The modern world still wrestles with their ancient disagreement. Science favors Aristotle's earthbound empiricism. Mysticism favors Plato's skybound idealism. Yet human life oscillates between both with every breath. When you analyze, you are Aristotelian. When you dream, you are Platonic. When you balance both, you are alive in full symmetry. Even now, experiments on the brain cannot disprove wonder, and faith cannot erase biology. The question of self survives because it is felt before it is solved. Memory keeps the Platonic self alive within modern minds. Psychology's fascination with memory echoes Plato's theory of recollection. We define who we are by what we remember. When memory fades, we feel identity dissolve, as if the soul were slipping away. That vulnerability renews Plato's thought. Perhaps the enduring self lies beyond neurons, not in the data, but in the witness of data. Even digital archives cannot reproduce that witness. Something in us observes thought itself, silent and continuous. That observer, pure awareness, is the modern trace of Plato's immortal principle. Action keeps the Aristotelian self alive in daily life. Every routine choice, every cultivated habit writes the architecture of personality. You become what you repeatedly do. Virtue is muscle memory of the mind. Selfhood, then, is not locked in the past but sculpted in the present. Each act tunes the soul like an instrument. The melody is your life, the harmony, your consistency. Aristotle reminds us that philosophy is practical. To think well is to live well. To live well is to think clearly. The self may be understood as the story that joins Plato's memory to Aristotle's motion. The thinker Paul Ricoeur later called this narrative identity. You are not a static thing, but a story told through time, connecting recollection to action, essence to evolution. Through story, the soul of Plato finds expression in the life of Aristotle, to remember truth and to realize virtue. This is the complete circle of being. When you tell your past, you invoke eternal meaning. When you live your values, you shape the world. In that rhythm, the self both endures and becomes. Every mirror you face reflects both heaven and earth back to you. Look closely. Which side do you see? Plato whispers that the reflection hides a divine spark impatient to return home. Aristotle suggests that the reflection is home, the visible truth of form fulfilling itself. Perhaps both are right. Perhaps selfhood is not behind the mirror or within it, but the act of seeing itself. Consciousness reflecting consciousness. When mind recognizes mind, the question, "Who am I?" becomes the answer it seeks. The inscription, "Know thyself," remains the most enduring command in philosophy. Carved on Apollo's temple at Delphi, it greeted every seeker before oracles spoke. Plato took it as invitation to remember the eternal self. Aristotle took it as challenge to examine the natural self. Together they urge balanced introspection. Know the timeless truth and the living pattern. To obey that command is not vanity, it is awakening. It is the oldest spiritual technology. Awareness applied to being. Every time you pause to witness thought instead of becoming it, you fulfill that inscription anew. The meaning of soul must evolve, yet the mystery it names remains. We can test the brain, describe networks, simulate neurons, but the subjective glow of existence eludes measurement. Call it soul, consciousness, awareness, whatever word fits your age. It is the presence through which experience happens, the first-person silence behind every sentence of thought. Plato gave it immortality, Aristotle gave it function. Perhaps it possesses both, eternal in principle, transient in form. Like music, it lives only while played, yet implies endless possibility. The way you define the self determines the life you will cultivate. If you follow Plato, you will see existence as pilgrimage toward ultimate truth. If you follow Aristotle, you will see life as craft, shaped by reason and habit. If you unite them, you will treat each moment as sacred practice, a chance to remember and to refine. Beliefs about self are blueprints for behavior. Choose a model that elevates responsibility and compassion, not separation and fear. The cosmos answers to the image you hold of yourself. Modern psychology is the new language of their ancient ideas. Freud divided the mind into ego, superego, and ID, another version of Plato's triad of reason, spirit, and appetite. Jung revived the world of forms as archetypes dwelling in the collective unconscious. Behaviorists and neuroscientists, studying patterns of stimulus and response, echo Aristotle's search for natural order within function. Every science of identity is a translation of that old Greek conversation, how the invisible takes shape in matter, how the organism mirrors the cosmos. The paradox of continuity proves that change and identity can coexist. We call ourselves by one name from birth to death, yet every cell, belief, and memory renews. Plato says the name stays true because a timeless essence anchors it. Aristotle says continuity emerges from organized motion, a pattern maintained through flux. Physics now speaks of dynamic systems, self-organizing processes. Different words, same wonder. The river is never the same, but somehow it is still the river. Identity is coherence through transformation, stability of rhythm rather than of substance. You live both as a memory of eternity and as a project of becoming. Plato's student lives inside you when you suddenly remember something timeless. Justice, beauty, love, beyond definition. Aristotle's student lives inside you when you learn through practice, falling and rising until skill becomes second nature. The union of those instincts, the contemplative and the practical, makes a whole human being. To know truth without embodying it is daydream. To act without reflection is noise. Together, they create meaning. Technology now multiplies our reflections, yet the ancient riddle remains. We scatter ourselves across screens, usernames, data patterns. Which version is you? Is the curated image online your soul's projection or its distraction? Plato would warn that the new cave flickers brighter than before. Aristotle would examine how these habits reform our character. Both would urge the same conclusion. Awareness must steer technology, not the reverse. You are not the pixels you cast. You are the consciousness that remembers and chooses through them. The self stands eternally between the infinite and the finite. To be human is to live at the intersection of timeless awareness and temporal expression. Plato shows us ascent, the movement from shadow to sun. Aristotle shows us alignment, the movement from chaos to order. Through both, the cosmos becomes conscious of itself. You are the conversation between being and becoming, the bridge over which eternity crosses into time. Every moment of awareness is the practice of knowing yourself. Pause for a breath. Witness thought. Arise, crest, dissolve. That still noticing is the Platonic remembrance. Now choose action with balance and intent, the Aristotelian refinement. Repeat this rhythm and life becomes deliberate artistry. You cannot hold identity static, but you can shape its flow wisely. The true self is not found once. It is rekindled daily in attention. Even death cannot silence the dialogue that defines you. Plato promises the soul's return to the realm of pure form. Aristotle explains that your intelligible pattern continues through the living world. In memory, influence, causes you set in motion. Either way, selfhood transcends isolation. You are continuous with the whole, whether by spirit or by order. Meaning, not duration, is immortality. The echo of understanding outlives the breath that carried it. The teachings of Plato and Aristotle form the bridge you already walk upon. Plato lifts your eyes to what is eternal. Aristotle steadies your steps upon what is real. Between them unfolds the human path. To dream beyond the world, yet to shape it responsibly. When you question what makes you you, you stand upon that bridge, a midpoint between abstraction and embodiment. The question itself is your proof of consciousness. The act of asking who you are is the universe remembering itself. When awareness wonders about its source, it mirrors eternity. Plato called that mirror the soul. Aristotle called it intellect in act. We call it self-consciousness. It is not an error of nature. It is nature recognizing its own depth. The cosmos becomes luminous through your curiosity. Reality looks through your questions and sees itself more clearly. The lasting answer is not definition, but participation. Perhaps the true self cannot be pinned to concept because it is the act of self-realization itself. You are neither fixed essence nor fleeting illusion. You are the dance between memory and matter, the song between thought and action. Plato gave the melody, Aristotle gave the rhythm. Together they left the choreography of conscious life. To live it is to become both student and teacher of being. The timeless message of both philosophers is that you are the meeting point of heaven and earth. From Plato's light, you inherit transcendence. From Aristotle's logic, you inherit structure. From both, you inherit the privilege of awareness. Do not seek the self as object. Awaken as the self that seeks. Do not wait for meaning. Manifest it through truthful action. Between recollection and realization, excellence and wonder, you unfold. And if you listen closely, beneath thought itself, you may hear them still. Two ancient voices, eternal and earthly, whispering in unison. Remember what you are. Become it fully.